This is the most dangerous wire in the U.S. Navy. A 25-ton jet slamming onto an aircraft carrier at 150 miles per hour. And the only thing stopping it is a steel wire you could close one hand around. 2 seconds later, the jet has stopped, and a sailor in a green shirt is sprinting straight at it. He has 35 seconds before the next jet arrives. Slow the landing down. The jet screams across the stern at full power because touching down gently was never the plan. The hook point drags along the steel, throwing sparks until it snags the third of 4 wires stretched across the landing area. The wire tears out behind the jet in 2 long loops, and the full weight of the aircraft slams to a full stop before the pilot can finish and exhale. Inside the cockpit, the pilot is thrown against the straps hard enough to blur his vision. On deck, the impact arrives through your boots before it arrives through your ears. Sailors call the catch a trap, and this one used 315 feet of deck. A jet at a normal airport can take more than a mile to shed that speed. This one gets a strip of steel shorter than a city block, and the strip is moving with the ocean under it. And the ocean gets a vote in every landing because the stern rises and falls even on a calm day. Look at the deck itself and the trick starts to show. 4 wires crossing, numbered from the stern about 50 feet apart, each one propped inches off the steel on curved leaf springs so a skimming hook can slide underneath. Pilots aim for the 3rd wire on purpose because moving in low on the 1st wire means coming in low on the ship. The Navy has landed this way since the 1920s, and the idea has never changed. A hook, a wire, and something strong enough to hold on. Catching a jet at that speed is like catching a sprinting dog by the collar with one finger. But here's the strange part. The wire didn't stop that jet. Something 6 decks of steel away did. Follow the wire to find out what. It runs to the deck edge, turns a corner, and dives down into the ship. Below the landing area sits a machine as long as a boxcar, and during a trap, this room is one of the loudest places on board. The operators down here never see the jets they catch. They feel them through the deck plates, and read them off a gauge. And the machine they tend is one of 4, one for each wire on the deck above. A second cable, chained to the wire above, screams through a block of massive pulleys. The pulleys drive a giant ram into a cylinder of hydraulic fluid, and the fluid has nowhere to go except through one small valve. This is the arresting engine, and Navy training manuals describe its job in one line. The entire violence of a carrier landing becomes fluid forced through a metered hole. The momentum of a 50,000-pound aircraft turns into heat and pressure inside a steel tube, and the jet upstairs rolls to a gentle stop. A syringe the size of a school bus, with the jet as the thumb. But that valve is not fixed. It has one setting per aircraft, which means someone has to change it before every single landing. So between traps, a voice calls away the next aircraft type. Below deck, an operator dials the valve to a new number, and topside, the arresting gear officer holds the deck foul until it's set. 60 seconds, every landing, all day long. That number is a weight setting. Every aircraft type gets its own resistance, dialed in before it ever crosses the stern. And an empty fighter and a loaded one can sit tons apart. Set the number too soft and the jet runs out of deck. Set it too hard and the wire takes the difference. Catching a fastball and catching an egg, with the same hands and a different give. That's straight out of the Navy's own gear manuals. The number does the catching. The steel just delivers it. And one deck up, nobody ever sees the number. They see a wire that works, until the day the number is wrong. Back on deck, the jet is stopped. It rolls back a few feet, and the wire is supposed to drop off the hook on its own. This one doesn't, so a green shirt sprints in, ducks under a tailpipe still hot enough to blister paint, and rips the wire off the hook by hand. Then he signals across the deck, retract. The wire snakes home, and the landing area opens again. And somewhere behind the ship, the next jet is in the groove. The Smithsonian Air and Space magazine followed these crews at work, and the sailor with that job has a name, the hook runner. He's usually a junior sailor, a year or 2 out of training. The heat of a turning engine reaches him through his gloves, but the wire is the part he respects, because the wire is the part that's floated. And he's not alone out there, even if he's the only one you'd notice. Watch the landing area closely, and 7 people appear. A deck edge operator who retracts the wire remotely, the hook runner who frees it and gives the signal, 2 sailors with push bars muscling the wire clear of the deck edge, 2 checkers, one reading the wire while the other watches their backs. Because on a live landing area, looking down is the one mistake the deck never forgives, and a topside petty officer running all of it. Until they finish, the deck is foul, the Navy's word for a landing area that can't catch anything. The whole reset takes as little as 35 seconds, and the runner learns the rhythm the way a boxer learns to jab. A jet, a sprint, a signal, a clear deck. A minute of stillness, and the sky sends another one. On a busy flying day, that can mean more than 100 landings. The jets got faster and heavier over the decades, and the humans kept the same 60 seconds. Every wire out there is on a countdown, and nobody waits for it to run out. Trap number 125 rolls clear, and the crew moves before the next jet even turns in. Couplings crack open at the deck edge. The old wire drags off the landing area, and the new one hauls across, seats onto its springs, and meets the checker's hands. Sailors kneel and run bare fingers down every strand, the way they do after every last landing. When a checker aboard the USS George H.W. Bush found broken strands during one of those inspections, the wire came out of service on the spot. By the book, the whole swap takes about 3 minutes. Then the deck is back in business. Now look at what they just threw away. Inside that wire is a piece of the 19th century. The steel strands are twisted around a core of oiled hemp rope, and the hemp seeps lubricant into the strands every time the wire stretches under load. Old rope making buried inside a 21st century warship. The wire is rated at more than 200,000 pounds of breaking strength, enough to hang a loaded airliner from. And both numbers are official Navy figures. And the Navy retires it anyway after exactly 125 landings. Not when it looks worn, when the count says so. Airlines retire tires the same way, by the number and never by the look. The count, the checkers, the bare hands on the steel. None of it is caution for its own sake. All of it was written by the days the wire won. Every rule of it has to live inside a person. The Navy starts building that person before he can legally buy a beer. A new green shirt stands on his first live recovery, 5 days aboard and 19 years old. The topside petty officer put him on this exact square of deck. His job right now is to stand on it, hands at his sides, touching nothing. A jet traps 30 feet away. The deck kicks through his boots, and the noise gets through both layers of his hearing protection like they're not even there. Nobody on the deck looks at him, yet everybody knows exactly where he is. That sailor's schooling started months ago, and it finished nowhere near a classroom. Boot camp first, then 5 weeks in Pensacola, Florida, learning the machinery. Then comes the real education, the ship itself. His qualifications live on a card, and the card gets signed one watch at a time, one job at a time, always under somebody's eyes. He does everything supervised until the signatures say he's trusted alone. The runner's job is earned by standing next to it, over and over, until the deck stops being chaos and starts being choreography. All of it is spelled out in Navy rating manuals. And before any of that, on day 1 comes the deck's first law. Until the wire says otherwise, a landing jet is a missile aimed at the ship. Pilots push to full power the moment their wheels touch, because a hook that misses all 4 wires means flying again off the angled edge of the deck. That's called a bolter. And the angle exists so the miss goes out over open water instead of into parked aircraft. The law was written the hard way. One night off Florida in 1981, an EA-6B coming aboard the Nimitz drifted off the center line, clipped a parked helicopter, and plowed into aircraft packed forward. The fire was out in 70 minutes. The ship was back at sea in just 2 days. And for decades afterward, the crew read the names from that night aloud each May, one bell ring at a time. The new green shirt hears that story in his first week aboard. But school only teaches the machine. The deck teaches the enemies, and the first one is invisible. February 20, 1991, on the launch side of the USS Theodore Roosevelt's deck, with the ship's own camera rolling, a young sailor named John Bridges checks an A-6 bomber before launch and steps inches too far. The intake grabs him, the engine coughs, chokes, and winds down, and John Bridges crawls back out. His gear tells the story. The float coat went in first, then the goggles, then the cranial off his head, and investigators believe that shredded helmet is what jammed the engine ahead of him. The gear that was built for his skull ended up protecting all of him. A jet engine at even part power pulls in everything inside its reach, air and metal and people alike. The Navy has replayed that deck camera footage to new sailors for decades. Bridges walked away from it. The lesson never has. An intake nearly ate a man and stopped on his helmet. So every morning before flight operations, the deck holds a ritual. Hundreds of sailors line up shoulder to shoulder, officers and enlisted together, rank meaning nothing, and they walk the deck from bow to stern with their eyes on the ground. Slow lines, near silence, a sailor bending down every few steps, a screw, a scrap of safety wire, an eyelet off a boot. It looks less like naval warfare and more like the world's most heavily armed Easter egg hunt. FOD is the Navy's word for foreign object debris, and it means anything loose on a flight deck. To an intake, a drop bolt is a round waiting to be fired, and one screw in the wrong engine can wreck it mid-launch. So the whole crew hunts debris on foot, several times a day, every day at sea. Everything found goes into a bag, and the bag gets read like evidence. A found screwdriver gets traced back to the toolkit that lost it, and the toolkit gets traced to a name. Crew memoirs and the Navy's photo archives show the same picture on every carrier in the fleet. The most powerful warships on Earth, swept by hand. Every enemy so far can be rehearsed against. Blast has rules, intakes have distances, and debris has the walkdown. The runner's own enemy hands you nothing. April 18, 1996, the Nimitz again, riding in the Gulf of Thailand during a tense standoff over Taiwan. The deck crew has run recoveries all day, and nothing about this one looks different. What they didn't know is that the wire rising to meet this Tomcat is on its last catch. The aircraft slams down and traps. The wire parts, and it found the crew. CNN carried the story the next morning. The Navy withheld the names until the families were notified. What does a parted wire actually do? It doesn't fall. Every pound of tension stored in the steel lets go at once, and the wire lashes back across the deck like a snapped guitar string the size of a fire hose. When another one broke aboard the USS George Washington in 2003, reporters clocked the whip at over 100 miles per hour, faster than a flinch, no warning before it goes, and no sound until it's already moving. A sailor facing the wrong way never knows. Green shirts learn the word for it before they learn almost anything else. Snapback. And a landing area is never empty when a wire lets go. The 7 are out there, along with fuel crews, ordnance handlers, and directors, every one of them inside the wire's reach. So every carrier drills the same reflex into everyone who works up there. When a wire parts, you don't stand to watch, because by the time you see it, it's already past you. Everything else on this deck announces itself. Heat you can feel, noise you can hear, suction you can map, debris you can hunt. The wire gives you nothing, and the worst one ever caught on camera started as ink on a page. March 18, 2016, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower off the coast of Virginia, landing aircraft on a clear Friday afternoon. Between traps, 3 sailors stand below the deck at the number 4 arresting engine, the machine behind the last wire on the ship. The wire threw a fault code after an earlier landing, and the manual in their hands walks them through the fix step by step. Fixes like this happen between recoveries all over the ship, and most of them matter to nobody but the fixers. What the manual never does is warn them. The procedure carries no warnings on its critical steps, no supervisor checks, no hint of what the steps protect. All of that comes straight from the Navy's own investigation, written after the fact. The sailors miss at least one step, possibly 2, and a valve that governs the engine's entire holding power lands on the wrong setting. Nothing in the room changes, no alarm, no red light, no smell of anything wrong. The 3 of them finished the job believing they did it right, and the Navy would later agree that any reasonable sailor would have. On paper, the number 4 engine is fixed. Topside, its wire goes back into service. Nobody knows what that wire is now. Not the sailors, not the arresting gear officer, and not the 3 men in the Hawkeye circling overhead, halfway through their landing quals. The Hawkeye comes down the wake, propellers turning, hook down. It traps the number 4 wire, and for 1 second, everything is textbook. Normal pull, normal slowdown. Then a bang. loud enough that all 3 crew members hear it over their own engines, and the tailhook slams back onto the steel. The aircraft keeps rolling. The wire has broken at the hook itself. The misprogrammed engine below deck couldn't swallow the landing, so the energy hunted for the weakest point in the chain and found the steel on the deck. The wire was never the failure. It was the fuse. 20 tons of aircraft, no brake, and only 200 feet of deck left. The Hawkeye rolls off the bow and drops out of sight. The deck camera holds on empty ocean. 1 second. 2. Then the aircraft climbs back into the frame, flying 10 to 20 feet above the water. How? The throttles. Every carrier pilot shoves them to full power the instant the wheels touch, on every landing for exactly this moment. The crew heard the bang, felt the shudder, and propellers were spooled and pulling. A habit drilled 10,000 times for missed wires had just saved all 3 lives. In this same minute, the aircraft turns for the coast, and the investigation notes it landed at Norfolk without a scratch, which might be the most remarkable sentence in the whole report. On the deck, nobody has time to be amazed. Every eye up there is on the plane. The wire is already moving the other way. The parted number 4 whips across the flight deck. Sailors sprint clear of it. Then they turn around and run back toward their shipmates. Sailors go down, and some of them leave the ship by helicopter. The whip does $200,000 of damage in about a second, and then the deck goes still. Then the shouting starts, and the runway becomes a rescue. One object from that deck tells the story better than any report could. A sailor's cranial, photographed afterward, crushed out of shape. The shipmate who posted the picture wrote that the helmet had saved his life that day and begged everyone reading to never skip their gear. The helmet did its job. So did the sailors. So, in a way, so did the procedure. That was the problem. Years later, on the deck of the Navy's newest carriers, a jet traps. Below deck, there's no hydraulic ram, no cable screaming through pulleys. The stop is electromagnetic now, metered by software that adjusts its grip moment to moment as the wire pays out. This is the advanced arresting gear aboard the Navy's new Ford class of carriers. Development ran over $1 billion, which is a lot of money to replace one small valve with software. Topside, one thing hasn't changed: a green shirt already sprinting. The Eisenhower investigation found no willful negligence, and nobody was charged. It blamed a procedure that was technically correct and practically dangerous, and the Navy rewrote it. The new gear retired the hydraulics entirely. Somebody still has to feel the frayed strand with bare fingers. Somebody still has to duck under the tailpipe and free a fouled hook by hand while the next jet lines up behind the ship. You can't automate a brake. Nobody has automated the last 60 seconds. The Nimitz herself is steaming toward retirement now, the oldest carrier in the fleet after more than 50 years of catching jets. The wire she carried will outlive her on every deck that follows. On one of them, right now, a new wire seats onto its springs, trap 1 of 125. The deck is ready, and somewhere behind the ship, the next jet is already turning in. If you enjoyed this video, then watch this one on how U.S. carriers make more than 10,000 meals a day. Bye for now.